Hello lovely, my name is Frankie and this is my daughter Juno, and in today's video we are going to help you prepare for the most positive birth experience. So expect to hear everything that I did in preparation for a positive birth. One of the first things I did when I found out that I was pregnant is I looked into hypnobirthing. So if you haven't heard much about hypnobirthing, it is basically a pain relief technique. So it involves relaxation techniques, breathing techniques, and affirmations to help you overcome the pain of labor. So essentially it keeps you calm and in control, which therefore also helps you have sort of a smoother and less complicated labor. So yeah, hypnobirthing was one of the first things I did. So I went with the Positive Birth Company. All of the information that I give you will be linked in the description down below if you want to check it out. So yeah, I followed the breathing techniques, I listened to positive affirmations, I had positive birth affirmation cards up around the house. I practiced the up and down breathing quite regularly. I also got my partner involved, so he watched the videos with me, read the book, and he also really enjoyed it, and I felt more in control knowing that he knew the information, so he could remind me of things to do. So that was really nice, and I do genuinely think my birth would have been different if I hadn't have done it. I think I would have felt a lot less informed and a lot less in control, and I do think that the breathing and the affirmations really helped me kind of mentally prepare as well and get into this kind of state of calm. It's not the same for everyone, and I have heard stories for people that think hypnobirthing doesn't work at all, it didn't work for them, but it did work for me and it could work for you. So I think definitely give it a go if you want to try and learn new things and learn sort of different vocabulary and different ways to manage pain during birth. Next up, I'm going to recommend making a solid birth plan. Now, this one sounds a little bit contradictory because although I recommend having a solid birth plan, you need to be completely prepared for it to fly out the window. So have an idea of what you want, but also be totally relaxed in the sense that it's not going to go to plan. You'll be very lucky if your birth plan literally goes as you've listed, if there's no interventions, if that happens to you, fair play, because I feel like it's quite unlikely that the birth plan will go 100% right. So tips for your birth plan, and this is something that I put on mine. So for example, I said that I wanted to have a home birth. I wanted to give birth in the water. Definitely didn't want to be lying on my back. I wanted to have an unmedicated birth. And if at any point I needed intervention or the nurses, doctors, midwives recommended pain relief, then I wanted it to go through my partner first, so that he could make the decisions for me and then come to me with the information, basically. My birth plan went completely out the window. I will link my positive birth story in the description down below so that you can check it out. Reading. Now, for me personally, I'm not sure about you, but I believe that knowledge is power. So when I found out I was pregnant, I read all of the books. I read a book purely about pregnancy, a book purely about birth, books on what it would be like to be a new mother. I just wanted to absorb all of this information, and I kept going back to books like the hypnobirthing book. I think I read 3 different books on birthing. So one hypnobirthing and 2 other ones about making your birth better and things like that, and positive births. And I just absorbed all of the information because I am not a medical person. I am not in that industry. I don't know loads about drugs. I didn't know much about the birth procedure before. I'd heard stories from my mum, from other women in my life, but I didn't know kind of what the drugs did, any of the medical terminology. So I wanted to learn that information so that I felt more informed and therefore more in control. And I think it really helped. So I literally learnt, I can't even off the top of my head remember it now, but at the time it was very at the front of my mind, which is probably why I kept reading different books about birth, to kind of keep that at the front of my mind. So I knew all about the different drugs. I knew all about the different interventions, birth terminology, the tearing, blood loss, the placenta, cord clamping, skin to skin, breastfeeding. I read a whole book on breastfeeding before I'd even started breastfeeding. And I just think all of that information really helped me feel mentally and physically prepared as well, because I had such a good idea of what my body was going to go through, what drugs would help in certain ways, which would affect the baby, all sorts of information. Basically, what I'm trying to say is knowledge is power in this situation. And I and my partner felt so much more in control because we knew so much more about the process. And he read a couple of the books as well. So he read the Hypnobirthing book, which he really, really loved. And he recommends it to everyone that's having a baby. All birth partners, he says, should read it because it's just science-based. It completely makes sense. And it is a really good book. But I also read other books, and he wasn't sort of so interested in reading some of them, but I would just kind of bookmark areas and pages or chapters that I thought would be beneficial for him to read. And he did read all of them. So that was great. And just really reassuring for me as well to know that he wasn't going into the birth without a clue. He knew what to expect, and that was reassuring. And he also knew, like, he had my back, which is a huge part of hypnobirthing. Like, your birth partner has your back throughout. They are there for you. They are there to help you and provide for you what you need. And he knew all of the information about the drugs that I wanted, didn't want, would accept, what interventions I didn't want, would accept, etc. So I would definitely recommend that. Better educate yourself. You're only going to feel more in control. Another solid bit of advice that I could give is about the due date. So are you chatting as well? Is this your YouTube channel now? And this is something that I struggled with a little bit because I think everyone is so hooked up on your due date. What's your due date? When are you due? 2 weeks until your due date. You're overdue once you've passed your due date. And there's a lot of pressure around that one date. But statistically, hi. She's just staring at me. Statistically, I think it's like less than 5% of babies are born on their due date. So just disregard that date, throw it out the window. One thing that really, really helped me was using it as like a benchmark and thinking my baby will come from this date onwards. I just kind of knew that the baby wouldn't be early. Hi, do you want this? I kind of knew that Juno wouldn't be early, so I kind of set that date as the 30th of January was her due date. I just reminded myself after that date that my baby would come from that date onwards. I know that my partner Phil, his kind of mentality was 2 weeks before, 2 weeks after. I don't know where you are in the world, but in the UK, they don't tend to let you run later than 2 weeks overdue. Now, you can put your foot down and say that you don't want to be induced, you don't want X, Y, and Z, but they really try and encourage you not to go over 2 weeks. Luckily, Juno I went into a sort of natural labour 8 days overdue with Juno. So you came on the 7th of February, didn't you, girl? Another piece of advice that I would give around your due date is if you need to ask people to stop messaging you, just do it. You're pregnant and you are your main priority right now. And if you are worrying and stressed because you've gone overdue, then those messages aren't going to make you feel any better. Just politely say, look, you will hear from me when things happen. And until then, please just let's act like this is a totally normal day. And sometimes they'll get the picture, sometimes they won't. But you said your piece, and that's all that matters. We're now going to talk about self-belief, and I think this is a massive part of having a positive experience as a whole, because when you believe that you can do something, you're going to try harder, you're going to feel more positive about what's going to happen. But when you think you're going to have the worst time, you're not going to enjoy something, it's going to be really hard, then you're not going to have a great experience because you're going into it negatively with a negative attitude. So you need to have self-belief, believe that you can do it, and almost in a way, it goes back to the affirmation side of it and kind of manifest a positive birth experience. I truly believed that I could do it and would do it, and that I would be okay and I would get through it. And you will too. It's so primal and natural. It's one of the most natural things that you can do as a woman. So just go with it and believe that you can do it. That quite nicely leads me in to my next point, which is just have fun and be excited. All the time, you should be enjoying what you're doing and doing things that make you happy, especially in the last kind of 2 to 3 weeks of pregnancy. I tried really hard not to get down, sit around. If I wanted to sit around and do nothing or watch TV, because it brought me joy, then I would do it. But I didn't want to mope around and be like, oh, I'm going to be pregnant forever. This is so annoying. Because you're not going to be pregnant forever, and it will come to an end, and you will have your gorgeous baby at some point. So what are your favourite things to do? And again, this all comes back to hypnobirthing and releasing oxytocin. So when you release oxytocin, you are happy. It's like the love hormone, and that's what brings on labour. So this is quite funny actually, and I'm not sure if it's related or if it's a complete coincidence, but I hadn't really had any labour pains, any kind of pre-labour contractions, anything at all, no signs that Juno was coming whatsoever. And then I went into labour on Sunday night, and on the Saturday night, Phil and I, my partner, we went to the cinema and watched the Jackass 4 movie, and I was crying with laughter. I was howling. I couldn't even sit in the seat because I was so uncomfortable. I was like on my side watching it in the cinema, and I had like my favourite sweets, my favourite drinks, like things that I really fancied, like pick and mix and stuff like that. I was really loving sweets and chocolate, and I had the best time. We both laughed so much, and I genuinely believe that was the final kick. It was like released all that oxytocin, and the next day I started having like really strong tightenings across my lower bump when I was cleaning the house, nesting. I went into like full nest mode, and that's the day that I went into labour, and I had her at 2:50 a.m. the following morning. So it was a really short labour actually, which was great. But I definitely think that going and doing that, going to the cinema, watching a really funny film that really tickled me, made me laugh so much. I want to watch it again, to be honest. It was so good. So what I'm basically trying to say, moral of the story is do things that you enjoy to bring on labour. And lastly, we're just going to talk about being organised. So don't go too crazy, because you don't need to go too crazy. Being organised is just going to help when you do go into labour and you know where everything is, your birth partner knows where everything is, and you'll just feel, again, more in control, and like you can just let go because you know you've packed your charger already, and you don't need to run around before you get in the car to go to the hospital to put it in the bag because you've done it. It's just things like that just make it just flow, and everything just ticks over a little bit more smoothly when you've sort of pre-prepared. So what I would say is, at the end of December, I packed a hospital bag. So that had everything that I needed for birth in hospital. And I packed it with Phil, so he knew where everything was. And then like a few weeks, probably 2 weeks before, I made like a snack bag. So like dry snacks that we could take if we needed them. Had a couple of Lucozades in there, which was a great shout. Get yourself some Lucozades, or like energy drinks for when you're giving birth or for after. I definitely drank I think I drank a whole Lucozade after I gave birth, because you're like so zapped of energy, and it really helped. But yeah, just be organised. Have everything ready that you want. Have your favourite pyjamas washed. Have a backup pair. Have your comfy clothes packed. And just get everything ready that comforts you and have like a list of things that you need to do on the day. Just be organised, and it will just help your birth experience go a lot more smoothly, I think. And totally get your partner on board with this one as well. Let them pack everything, unpack everything, run through some scenarios where you need certain things and they can find them. Do that kind of stuff. It will really, really help. You're amazing, and I'm so excited for you, and I hope you enjoyed this video. Don't forget to check out my positive birth experience, and I've just done another video which is newborn and mama essentials. So they're both linked in the description down below. Check them out. Lots of love. Bye.